So, in the hullabaloo announcements from the Supreme Court of the United States, and it's been a really good time. Like we've had so much bad news as constitutionalists, textualists, people who believe in the founders' vision for America, that it's rare that we get two or three really great announcements in the news in succession. And that's what happened over the weekend with the Supreme Court issuing rulings on whether or not homeless people have the right to have tents out in public. They struck that down. Fantastic. Good for the rule of law. Good for homeless people. We covered that here on the show already. You have the ruling on President Trump's immunity, which is absolutely a good thing because it's not really about President Trump's immunity. No new rights were conferred. This is actually a conversation surrounding what every president since George Washington has had, and that is immunity for official acts that they decide to undertake while they're exerting their official capacity as president. So this is a very important thing. And then, of course, the administrative state taking the literally having their head taken off by the Supreme Court after they eliminated the Chevron deference, which we also discussed here on the show. But right now, I want to focus on Justice Thomas's concurrence in Trump v. United States. This was, first of all, it's a pleasure to read. If you enjoy having an understanding of something, so it's written in language that you can understand, but still beautifully and eloquently presented so that you can understand the underlying thoughts and processes and the constitutional basis for something, then Justice Thomas's concurrence it's a must read. Now, there's an analysis of it by Benjamin Weingarten. He's using X's new feature where you can publish an article on X. And what he did was he took his article from the Federalist and he made it palatable within the word limit for this new feature on X where you can publish it. And that's where I found it. And it is absolutely glorious because he takes the words of Justice Thomas and he writes about this concurrence in ways that make it easy for us to really discuss. And I'm serious about this. If you have people you're going to be gathering around with later on this week, and this comes up and they start screaming and yelling and stamping their feet about how this right wing activist Supreme Court, their words, not mine, is actually using their power to give new rights to President Trump. That's just not true. The first thing is there were no new rights or abilities conferred on any president by the ruling that was made last week. But let's go into some detail. You have this hugely significant concurrence that was written by Justice Thomas. And in it, in addition to confirming that all presidents have immunity for official acts, the example that I would give that was shared to me by a brilliant lawyer from the Landmark Legal Foundation is if you go back to 9/11, you might recall that there were planes that were flown into buildings on 9/11. It was a terror attack, the largest one ever to be committed on U.S. soil. And when President Bush was informed that this was going on and that planes were being used as weapons, the person who was informing him at the highest ranking member of our military asked him if he would authorize the U.S. Air Force to down any commercial airliner that refused to land. After they issued, and just moments after they spoke, they basically grounded every aircraft in the United States. And so what happened was in his official capacity as president, President Bush had to make a decision to authorize our U.S. military to down a commercial airliner that would indeed have American pilots downing an American aircraft full of mostly Americans, that those people would be killed because they were under the control of a terrorist who had commandeered the plane. He did authorize that. We didn't have to do it. All of the planes were landed, all of the attack. By the time he was notified, the planes had already been put into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, and the other one was downed in a field instead of going into its third target. And so I I think about that and how difficult it must have been for him in that moment, but he didn't have time to think it through. He couldn't convene a group of individuals from the public policy space. He couldn't read white papers on it. It was an unprecedented moment in time, and he made the decision. That was an act taken in his official capacity, and had an F-16 shot down a commercial airliner, there would have been no recourse for the families of those people against President Bush because he was acting in his official capacity. The same thing goes for the killing of al-Awlaki. This is a young man who was an American citizen who happened to be near the target of a drone strike when President Obama authorized our military to kill him. He also killed an American citizen. That man's family had no recourse against President Obama because he took those acts as his official capacity as the president of the United States. And on it goes. The examples are actually many, and no president before President Trump has ever been subjected to trials post presidency related to acts they took while in office. This is an unprecedented territory. And so, in light of that, you have Justice Thomas asking a question about the foundation of a few of these cases that President Trump is currently undergoing, and that is Special Counsel Jack Smith's office. The question that is posed by Justice Thomas is it constitutional? He says in his concurrence, if there is no law establishing the office that the special counsel occupies, then he cannot proceed with this prosecution. A private citizen cannot criminally prosecute anyone, let alone a former president. Justice Thomas goes on. We cannot ignore the importance that the Constitution places on who creates a federal office. To guard against tyranny, the founders required that a federal office be established by law. As James Madison cautioned, if there is any point which the separation of the legislative and executive powers ought to be maintained with greater caution, it is that which relates to officers and offices. And you can find this quote yourself in 1 Annals of Congress 581. So if Congress has not reached a consensus that a particular office should exist, the executive lacks the power to create and fill an office of his own accord. If this, and people are calling it a missile aimed at Jack Smith's office, a missile aimed at Attorney General Merrick Garland, wherever it's going to land, the missile has weight. It's of ordnance. It actually would destroy this entire sham prosecution, all of the cases that are being tried by Jack Smith. He also said in his concurrence, Justice Thomas, it is difficult to see how the special counsel has an office established by law as required by the Constitution, going on to say none of the statutes cited by the Attorney General appear to create an office for the special counsel, and especially not with the clarity typical of past statutes for that purpose. Even if the special counsel has a valid office, questions remain as to whether the Attorney General filled that office in compliance with the Appointments Clause. So I'd love to see all of this wrapped up, the elimination of the so-called special counsel office because it was not properly and duly appointed, because it is not constitutional. It would be amazing to have that wrapped up before the election so that we could eliminate the distraction of 2 additional trials that never should have been launched in the first place. And I'll say this, for all of the gnashing of teeth by liberals, by leftists, by progressives who are complaining because they claim that new powers have been duly offered by a radicalized right-leaning Supreme Court. Why are these things even before the court? Why is our Supreme Court taking up time where they should be adjudicating cases that come from the people of the United States, and they're instead working on this? They're doing it because Democrats decided to launch this warfare and lawfare against a man they didn't think they could beat at the ballot box. Had they not launched these cases, we would not have a clarification, a consequential clarification never before made by any court in the United States as to what constitutes the power of the office of the presidency and how it relates to immunity. So we can thank the Democrats for this new clarity, and you can rebuff them this weekend as you're eating your barbecued ribs, because this has been a fantastic week for jurisprudence in our great country. Up next, we just sent the Ukraine 12 F-16s. I'll tell you more after this.